different people and different parts of the company having different levels of understanding when it comes to open source. What are the most common concerns and questions and challenges that you've seen people have or people asked you about?
I think one of the biggest challenges was understanding the community dynamics because each community has its own way of working and the culture and also own rules. Um, but once you understand the principles of collaboration, it becomes much easier to get involved and make meaningful contributions, I think. And one of the main things is if you're contributing to a project, we should bring some value to the community, not just sake of committing some code, because it adds overhead on maintaining the code base for the community, right? So that's also something we need to balance. Yeah.
Has it ever been challenging to show people the value of both relying on open source code as well as to invest in upstream work and upstream involvement? Like even when you're not contributing code, you still can be involved in the project in various other ways.
It's going okay so far. Like we haven't had any challenges like on such cases. Obviously, within the organization, for the sake of open sourcing such things, like not that the whole organization like accepts it, right? So there are certain pockets that you need to do more convincing, show the value of open sourcing, and also making use of open source tools. Because not every team is up to the speed of the technology stack that we use. And having said that, we also need rest of the organization to follow us and uh, follow the journey because they will need to start some of these tools at some point. So it's also the shift in the culture that we see, as well as the skills we need, slowly evolving in that way. Yeah.
I remember it being the practice in the past that a vendor or partner company did contributions as opposed to the operator or even the telecom vendor. Is that still a practice, or do operators and vendors do the open source engagement themselves more today?
I don't know the engagement of the vendors, but I believe they do collaborate with this organizations or bodies within large organizations like Linux Foundation or CNCF. For us, it's been a direct engagement. So we within Netbox, if you want to open source the code or host the code base with Netbox community, it was a direct engagement from our side.
I remember when I was working for Ericsson, they had partnerships with Mirantis, Red Hat, and others as well. And sometimes, as part of those partnerships, Mirantis or Red Hat would work on features upstream as opposed to people who were employed by Ericsson. So I wonder if you have like any vendors who you're working with who might ship components to you with open source in it. So is it still a standard practice to have the vendor do upstream work on those and maybe in other projects as well, or is the preference more to do as many things yourselves as possible? Because in the past it didn't really feel like that was an approach to try to reach the state where either a telecom operator or telecom vendor does the upstream work themselves. That wasn't the goal in the past, at least 9 years ago, in my personal experience.
The operator should do the upstream work where it makes sense. It's not something that operators can do by themselves, not the whole thing, right? So certain aspects need to come from the vendor, and we highly encourage them to use open source tools because there's a larger development or developer community, and also it's quite fast evolving. So it's highly encouraged. But one observation that I see is from the vendor side, due to the hardening or whatever reasons, they tend to fork a open source project and they go down in that own path without upstreaming these changes. So it has blocked us in some automation capabilities because we do the integration by ourselves. And yeah, I think for the vendors, one of the messages I want to give is then, or one of the asks is, if you're using open source tools, be truthful and upstream your changes, and don't fork and go in a different direction, because it also blocks us in the in our automation. Yeah.
So that is a challenge that you experience as well after
Yeah.
receiving that package and code.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd say from my experience, I see pretty much an entire spectrum of how different organizations, and also including internally within Ericsson, how they engage with upstream projects. I think both Ericsson and Swisscom are collaborating in the NEFIO project. We've definitely got folks there working significantly. And then there are places like MetalCube that's very important to the telco industry and important to Ericsson, in the sense that we want to be able to deploy on bare metal in our various regimes, be it in packet core, be it more in the RAN, more in the radio access network. So we end up taking a lead there. But it's also the case that there are certainly projects and development teams inside of Ericsson where what I usually run into is a belief that the features that are being done, be it hardening or what have you, aren't actually wanted by the upstream project. And so in some cases that's true. In other cases, I think it's a miscommunication between the project of the users within the company and what the upstream community is actually asking for. Because as you know, right, one of the things that you need to learn when you're engaging with an upstream project is, phrase it as what would be the benefits to the upstream project as to why such features would be desirable, as
Exactly.
opposed to just
What's the
for
value?
the end user.
Exactly.
Exactly. And then it's often the case that, the use case of one company is partial, right? But you might want to do something more substantial. You need to add more features, you need to add more tests, you need to have more use cases covered. So there's additional work that's beyond just what's necessary for that one company if you're going to put it into an upstream community that's leveraged by lots of different users with lots of different use cases. So that's the balance, and it is sometimes perceived by those users as, well, they don't want my changes. And that's not quite what's being said. It's just that there's more work and there's more collaboration that has to be done to actually have them accepted. And in the end, as you've alluded to some of the benefits of not having a local fork, but actually having all of those features upstream. And I would argue that there's more, because always trying to do those backports as new versions of those upstream projects come along is a lot of work as well, right? So that dialogue I've had with many companies. Ericsson is one of them, but they're not alone in having this.
I can imagine,
this is a misconception. Yeah, so it's definitely a journey for the companies.